At the beginning of the 20th century, American shipowners launched a considerable number of very large, mostly wooden schooners, which could be operated very cost-effectively due to their small crew sizes. Some conversions of classic square-rigged ships were also created, including the E.R. Sterling. Converted from a four-masted barque to a six-masted barquentine in 1903, the ship became one of the most economically successful tall ships of the final days of the sailing era. On July 21, 1883, the four-masted Lord Wolseley, with a tonnage of 2,518 tons, was launched at the renowned Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. At the time, she was one of the largest sailing ships in the world. She was a typical British-built, fully rigged ship, 308 feet long with 42 feet beam and 25 feet depth. The square-rigged masts were each divided into 3 sections, with a topmast and topgallant mast, and carried double topsails, topgallants, and royal sails. The main mast was also equipped with a skysail. The client was the shipping company Dixon, T & Sons, also known as the Belfast Lord Line, which commissioned its second ship, the Lord Wolseley, on September 6, 1883. The shipping company was active in the Indian trade, and the new ship, under the command of Captain J. Dunn, was initially used to transport jute from India to Great Britain. After the collapse of the jute business, the Lord Wolseley sailed primarily in the Pacific under Captain D. McVicker. She is said to have been re-rigged as a four-masted barque at this time. In 1898, the ship was sold to the German shipping company J.C. Tiedemann & Co., based in Bremen, and renamed Columbia. The first German commander was Captain H. Schutte. He and his successor, Captain H. Schwarting, sailed the four-masted barque to the North American west coast, as the new name suggested. In April 1903, the Columbia was partially dismasted while entering the Strait of Juan de Fuca off Cape Flattery, Washington. The foremast and mainmast were lost, but the ship was towed to Victoria, British Columbia. She was later docked in neighboring Esquimalt. The damage discovered turned out to be serious, so the German shipping company sold the ship to Victoria and Vancouver Stevedoring Company. This company used the hull as a storage facility under her original name, Lord Wolseley, for about a year. In 1904, the ship was sold to C.E. Peabody of Vancouver. Captain Delano, employed by Peabody, had the idea of converting her to a six-masted barquentine and was apparently able to convince his owner. The ship was towed to Seattle in 1905 and repaired and rebuilt by Moran Bras. The mizzen mast, along with all its yards, was erected in place of the lost foremast. 5 schooner masts were erected behind it. Thus, the first six-masted barquentine was created. Despite the 6 masts, the sail area was significantly smaller than before, but the crew required was only 17 instead of 28. The installation of steam winches also contributed to this. At the beginning of 1906, the 6-masted barquentine was recommissioned under the name Everett G. Griggs and sailed under the command of Captain Delano, carrying lumber and general cargo to Melbourne, Australia, in 88 days. According to her captain, the new rigging proved its worth despite the smaller sail area, as the ship could now sail closer to the wind. Delano retained command for several trans-Pacific voyages and then handed the 6-masted ship over to Captain F. Wan. However, the Peabody Company cannot have been entirely satisfied, as it sold the ship as early as 1910. The purchaser was American Captain Edward Robert Sterling from Blaine, Washington State. Sterling would command the 6-masted barquentine, now renamed the E.R. Sterling, alternately with his son, Ray Milton Sterling, until her demise in 1927. Sterling invested heavily in her acquisition and installed, among other things, a power generator, onboard telephone, and radio equipment. The E.R. Sterling was thus the world's first sailing ship equipped with a radio. The Sterlings also had a knack for leadership. It was therefore no wonder that the ship was economically successful for a long time. However, the high freight rates during and shortly after World War I contributed significantly to this. The ship remained in service on the Trans-Pacific route, primarily transporting timber to Australia and coal to the American West Coast. The voyage always took 80 to 100 days. During the war, the barquentine was also temporarily used for transport between Australia and New Zealand. In the 1920s, however, business became increasingly difficult. The economy was in crisis, and cargo for tall ships became scarce. In the end, the only remaining option was the wheat voyage from Australia to Europe, on which the last German and Finnish tall ships were also deployed. Thus, the E.R. Sterling, laden with wheat, set sail from Adelaide on April 16, 1927, under Captain Ray Sterling, bound for Great Britain. The voyage through the Pacific and around Cape Horn proceeded without major difficulties. North of the Falkland Islands, the ship lost 2 masts in a severe storm on July 4, 1927. Despite reduced sail area, the old 6-masted ship continued to battle north. On August 22nd, after 122 days of travel, she was still 600 nautical miles south of the equator. On September 4th, the E.R. Sterling encountered another severe storm off the Cape Verde Islands and lost her only square-rigged mast, the foremast. While attempting to save the ship, Chief Officer Roderick Mackenzie was so severely injured that he died shortly thereafter. After deploying an emergency rig, Captain Sterling set a course for the Antilles on the other side of the Atlantic, following the trade winds, as cruising with the stricken ship was virtually impossible. On October 15th, she entered the port of St. Thomas. From there, the ship was towed to London, where she arrived on January 28, 1928, 286 days after leaving Adelaide. Repairing the E.R. Sterling was not economically feasible, and so the ship was scrapped in Sunderland, starting in April 1928.